easier for you to just click? It's up to them.
It's probably smoother to just share. It just can get a bit stilted if you're saying next.
Yes, we're sorting out.
It's
want to ask. Hello, Kat, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, can you put your slide on just the first one and let's just see if it works. Just the
Okay,
first,
I
yeah.
think, let me just check something. If I do this, do you see the slides or do you see my presenter view?
Presenter view.
Okay, I think it's easier for me, at least, if you guys do the slide share because I only have one monitor here. So I don't know how to do this.
That's okay now. Is that
Now you
useful?
see the whole, do you see it as the whole screen or?
Okay, so we have this. Yeah, it should be fine now. Yeah, perfect, perfect. Don't do
If
anything
you'd like me to
else.
do that, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Okay, good.
Okay.
Can we see you, please? Hi, anyway, how are you?
Good to see you guys. Let's see. I've got a few people in the waiting room, which is great. And I can unblur my background.
And to our remote participants, thank you for joining. We will start shortly. Sorry for the delay. That's okay. I don't know why it's not going through. They can see us. Kat, you can see everyone, right? We can see you. No,
I
no,
can see
it's-
everyone. We do have 10 people in the waiting room. Could I let people in?
Yes, please let them in. They can see us. Don't worry. It's because it'll show the opposite on the screen. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Thank you all for joining. We're just setting up in the room and we'll begin shortly.
Technology. Should we? All right. Still alive. So I can see this because I need to see because
I have dropped the notes, a link to the notes document in the chat. If you would like to introduce yourself in the chat, or if you would like to go straight to that notes document. And if this is a topic that interests you, if it's something that you would like to follow up on, please feel free to add your information there.
Okay, Kat, we're going to start in 2 minutes. If you could use the chat forum to send messages to them, that would be nice too. Thank you.
Doing both. Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to start. Thank you for joining us today. The topic is a very interesting one. How many of you know
Recording in progress.
How many of you know deceptive designs? Raise your hand, please. Do you know the terminology deceptive designs? Good, because we're going to do a workshop and it's going to be very interactive and engaging. So I'm not going to talk too much about deceptive design because I am the moderator, but I am going to introduce you to the panelists today. We have our dear Kaushalya, just a sec, Kaushalya, who's the policy program manager leading the Tech Policy Design Lab in Web Foundation. We have Cheng, head of design and creative production for Access Now. We also have Beni, who's joining us remotely. Beni, if you could just show your face for 2 minutes. Beni is the research manager for Dvara Research India. And we also have Chandni Gupta, the digital policy director for Consumer Policy Research Center in Australia. And we have Kat, who's going to introduce you to what we do in Web Foundation and the Alliance for Affordable Internet, and also talk about what deceptive design is, how it applies to you. You may not know the terminology, but you have come across it. But I'm just going to hand it over to Kat, who is the director for policy for Web Foundation. Kat, over to you. And
Thank you.
Sorry, Kat, welcome to the remote participants as well. We look forward to working with you in the next few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. And that was Anju Mangal, who is our lead for Asia and Southeast Asia for Alliance for Affordable Internet at the Web Foundation. And I'm so glad that she's on and sharing this work today. Just a quick check, can you all see my slide? All right. So I just want to give you a little background about the organization that we work for, why we're here, why we're passionate about this work. So we work for an organization called the World Wide Web Foundation, and we build a better web for everyone, the web that you use every day. You may have heard of the title of the organization because we were founded by the inventor of websites, very specifically. Our founder, his name is Sir Tim Berners-Lee, in 1989 looked at the internet and saw that it was had a tremendous potential, but was solely being used as a communication tool for military, for academics, for a very elite few, and said, well, what kind of world would we have if everyone was able to communicate with each other and to connect around the world? And so he invented these websites so that you didn't have to be a coder, you didn't have to be a programmer, and you didn't have to have special access, but that anyone, regardless of where you were, would have the potential to connect with each other, to share their creativity, to share their ideas online. He and a few others started the Web Foundation, where we work, to try to preserve and support that original vision. How do we make a web that is for everyone? How do we work towards digital equality, a world where everyone has the same rights and opportunities online? And what we try to do is work towards a web that is safe, it is trusted, and it is empowering. To do this, we look at specific issues that are perhaps not very safe, not very trusted, and we try to shift those towards empowering. And that's exactly what we've done with deceptive design, trying to move towards trusted design. Now, Anju has prompted us with a specific question of, well, what is deceptive design, and how many of us know that? Well, you might know this term, sometimes known as dark patterns, and that is often the regulatory term that is used for it. Web Foundation, because of its role and because of its presence, has worked to change the name from dark patterns to move away from associating dark with something that is bad. And we've chosen the name deceptive design encapsulating practices in a website interface and that changes our behavior in a way that would get more information from us and lock us into contracts. This is sometimes called click to subscribe, call to unsubscribe. And when we think of this, when you get locked into contract, I'll just give you a few examples. Which of these buttons would you push in order to actually get out of the subscription? It's actually continue in order to go through. Do you see on this text, the very sort of passive aggressive note that will actually get you to follow through with what you intended? It's no, I like paying more than I need to. So if you're able to actually get to this location on a website to get your information off, this is more of an annoyance, takes up your time, takes up some of your energy. But if you're not able to figure out how to extract yourself from these websites, they can lock you in to contracts, and they can lock you into a way of getting your data and your finances and your information pulled away from you, which can be literally devastating for your savings and for finances for yourself, for your family. So what we've done here and what we're doing today is we run at the Web Foundation, we run these policy design labs. Kaushalya, Sage, and others will share more about them. They look like this, with people joining from around the world at all hours of the day and night. It is 3 a.m. my time for this one, and I'm very happy to be here with you all to share in this good work. And in these sessions, we look at, well, what does deceptive design look like? What does it look like here? What does it look like around the world? We try to document those conversations. And we work with multiple different organizations from government, civil society, private sector, all sections of the users of the web. And we try to think of, well, how could we make this better? And how could we move towards the topic today, which is trusted design? What would it feel like? What would it look like? How would you navigate a web that didn't have these harmful practices that suck in your data, that suck in your financial information and lock you into contracts and lock you into forces that you would not like to see. So that's what we're doing today. It's the kind of work that we do every day at the Web Foundation and ensure that everybody around the world has access, has meaningful access to the web, and is able to use it in a way that is safe and is trusted and empowered. So thank you all for joining us for this, and I'll turn that back over to Anju.
Thank you, Kat. I'm not sure if you understand deceptive trusted design yet or not, but we will have a workshop straight after the presenters. So the next half would be just, we'll get into breakout sessions and we'll discuss it, and we'll also help you to understand what deceptive design is and trusted design. Okay, now I'm going to invite Chandni to share his perspective. Duped by design. Chandni, over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
if you could just turn your video on. Thank you.
Okay. And are you able to see the screen as well?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Anju, and hello, everyone. So for the next 30 seconds, I want you to imagine you're about to walk into a department store. But before you can actually enter the store, you're asked to share your personal information. Once you're inside, you walk over to a table where you trial some free samples. But before you can, you're asked to hand over your credit card. Now you're walking through the aisles. And for every item you browse, you're told there's only a few left and lots of people have been looking at the very same product. For offers you say no to, staff make you feel guilty about it, commenting you must have preferred paying more, just the way Kat mentioned before. Once you're at the checkout, you notice that other items have been added to your basket, items you never looked at or even intended to buy. It sounds like a truly uncomfortable, perverse experience, but that's what's happening to consumers every day online, thanks to deceptive designs. And today I'll just walk you through a few of those that we saw in our research. So deceptive designs, as Kat said, also known as dark patterns, they're designed to influence our decisions, our choices, our experiences. Is it in our best interest? Often not. Is it illegal? In many jurisdictions, not at all. So where are deceptive designs? The short answer is they are everywhere. As part of our research, we asked 2,000 Australians in our survey to list the names of those businesses they could recall using deceptive designs, and businesses from almost 50 different sectors were identified. I'm going to share a couple of examples that we saw through our sweep, and then I'll touch on the deceptive and manipulative practices that are actually and how they're actually impacting consumers. So one of the most egregious designs is embedding hidden costs. The example you see here is of an extended warranty that's just been automatically applied to the consumer's cart. But if you look closely, the number of items shown near the shopping cart is just one, even though there's a second item that's been added by the business. Basically, this suppresses any cues early in the shopping process. It's not till right at the end that a consumer may fully realize what's happened, and they'll need to actively opt out for paying for the service plan. The funny thing is, the extended warranty that's been offered here is very similar. It could be very similar to what is offered in Australia for free under our consumer guarantees law. So it's unfortunate that consumers are being asked to pay more for something that they will get very little value out of. So when we surveyed consumers about this, almost 2 in 5 found this deceptive, and more than 1 in 4 found it manipulative. Now, this is an example Kat mentioned as well about unsubscribing, and as we like to call it, Hotel California. So for those of you who know the original song by the Eagles, you'll know the line, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And this design practice is all about creating barriers for consumers to move out or cancel out of a service they no longer need or want. We found that while it was super easy, often just one step, to sign up to something, signing out can take navigation of multiple steps involving additional questions and long pieces of content. And our research reveals 76% of Australians had experienced difficulty cancelling an online subscription. As part of our research, we really wanted to understand the real harm that consumers are experiencing due to deceptive and manipulative design. Dark patterns that create consumer harm. Consumers in our survey reported being compromised in their emotional well-being, with some experiencing financial and data-driven harms. 1 in 5 Australians reported spending more than they intended, and 1 in 5 felt pressured into buying something. When it comes to data harms, Australians reported that such deceptive designs led them to create accounts they didn't want to, accidentally sign up to something, and share more personal information than they wanted to. Basically, overall in our research, 83% of Australians said that they were negatively affected by experiencing deceptive designs in one way or another. And on the flip side, there's also a cost for businesses. Almost 1 in 3 Australians stopped using a website. Almost 1 in 6 felt their trust in the organisation had been undermined, and more than 1 in 4 now thought negatively about that organisation. So while in the short term, dark patterns may lead to financial and data gains for a business, in the long run, they will deteriorate consumer trust and loyalty. We've all got a role to play in ensuring a fair, safe, and inclusive digital economy for consumers. And while laws and regulations will ultimately catch up, it makes good business sense to give consumers a meaningful experience that's in their best interests. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chandni. Now I'm going to invite Kaushalya to highlight her perspective on deceptive designs and trusted designs. Thank you.
Could we have our slides? It doesn't work? Okay, next slide, please. The clicker doesn't work.
First slide, please.
Okay, the first slide, not even the next slide. The next slide, please. Okay. Yeah. The next slide, please. Okay. Hey, that's me, a big version of me. But hi, I am Kaushalya Gupta. I am the Policy Program Manager at the World Wide Web Foundation. I'm currently working with my colleagues at the Web Foundation, as well as Simply Secure and 3x3, our design firms, to run our Tech Policy Design Lab. So this Tech Policy Design Lab is a space for policymakers, tech companies, web users, civil society, academia, basically, to shape a safer, a more empowering, and a trustworthy web. And this is so in line with the second theme of the IGF. And so we're very, very grateful for this opportunity to be here. Next slide, please.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to see everybody here, and I hope you have an enjoyable morning despite the rains. I am Sage Cheng, and I'm the head of design and creative production at Access Now. And I'm here today to join Anju and Kaush and Kat and Chandni and Beni to have this session, and I want everybody to have a very informative and fun session. Access Now is an international human rights organization working to defend and extend digital rights for users at risk. And through like grassroots policy advocacy around the world and direct tech support, convenings such as RightsCon and legal interventions, as well as grants. We basically, everybody around the, Access Now's international team around the world is working towards human rights in the digital age. So I myself is a designer, and I worked in the advertisement industry before I joined civil society. And now I have pretty much like 8 years of experience in civil society, but also had the experience in the industry. And this gives me a leverage in basically scrutinizing and study design and the role of designers in the whole tech society in the international context. And because of that, right now, my passion is around studying the deceptive designs, also known as dark patterns. This issue and who are talking about that, and where everybody is working on around this issue, or different vocabularies that people are developing to talk about this issue. Right now, we're working on it's a tip sheet for design and product teams, and it's basically some do's and don'ts to ensure how to build trust through design, how to reduce dark patterns, as we say. Also, like dark patterns itself as a term has its own problem, as we can all relate to here. And we're actually working to collect in different regions how people talk about approach these issues for better terms. And that's pretty much what we're working on. The do's and don'ts sheet is going to be published at the end of this month. And it's a group, it's a working group across sectors. And it's like it has been developed for a couple of months. And also I'm helping Kaush and Kat at Web Foundation and Simply Secure and 3x3 to develop the tech policy design lab on the deceptive patterns. Next slide.
Yeah, so now it's back to me. Okay, so let's just start with this one question. How many of you face challenges or find it really difficult to unsubscribe to something or finding the unsubscribe button? Please raise your hands. Okay, okay, and how many of you actually don't find it difficult to unsubscribe? Okay, you are the solution, and we're so happy that you're here at the workshop today, because we're looking to you to kind of help us fix this problem. So that's great. But what we found is across the world, whether you're in the global north or you're from the global majority, from wherever you are, if you're marginalized, if you're the elderly, if you're a young child, these people actually find it even more difficult. Like, we must be mindful that the fact that we've made it to an in-person event in IGF, we come from a lot of privilege, or and if we find it difficult to unsubscribe or get trapped into things that we don't want to, then it's so difficult for people who are new to the internet, or are basically vulnerable to these kind of tricks. So we've seen how deceptive designs actually materially harm people. And these could be financial harms, like in terms of like subscriptions that are impossible to cancel, or hidden costs. You most probably find them when you're booking a flight. They'll kind of sneak in like an extra insurance that you didn't want. You're tricked into oversharing private information publicly. And there's aggressive data collection. Like many of you see these cookie banners, and the agree button is so easy to click, but when you want to like reject it, you have to click on more options. Or it's just you know, a much longer process if you want to reject something that's stealing and giving away your data. So basically what it's doing is it's denying us, it's denying you, it's denying users across the world their choice, and by hiding information. The TION is missing, spell check. Okay, next slide, please. And so at the Web Foundation's Tech Policy Design Lab, we've been engaging with over 100 organizations from 30 countries, and these are cross-sector and through multi-stakeholder, human-centered design and design thinking approaches. And what we're doing is we are bringing these different stakeholder groups together to co-create the solutions of what trusted design looks like. So we don't only want to discuss what the problem is, but we really want to go and be solutions oriented and kind of shape the future of trusted design. And that's what we're going to do in the latter part of today's session, work with you to kind of co-create solutions for what trust looks like. If you kind of see, we've engaged with all the different sectors, and that's the approach that we like to follow. We like to hear everyone out because, you know, at the end of the day, tools should be designed by those who use the tools. And so it's really important to kind of consult different groups in the process. Next slide, please. And so we've held 4 workshops so far, and these are by the Tech Policy Design Lab. We've also held sessions at the Oxford Internet Institute, RightsCon, MozFest, various other platforms. But these are the 6 opportunity areas that not us, but our participants like have kind of identified. And I will be very brief because I can see Anju is whispering something to my ear. So next slide, please. Okay. What we're trying to build is a set of principles or guidelines or code of conduct that governments can use, that they can adapt and adopt in their jurisdictions. That's one of the things that we're trying to develop. These are kind of like benchmarks to kind of see what good looks like and how we can actually build a trustworthy web. The next slide, please. We also need public awareness campaigns. So many of you raised your hands when I asked you if you found it difficult to unsubscribe. But when Anju asked you in the beginning, do you know what a deceptive design is? No one raised a hand. That means all of you are experiencing something, but you don't know what it's called. So we definitely need more public awareness to kind of put a name to this problem. That's only when you do that, then we can actually galvanize and gain momentum, you know. Next slide, please. Yes, we need to report these. So now we know that this is a problem, but we also need to actively find a method or a tool to make it visible and report. Next slide, please. We also need an evaluation framework. You can't fix what you can't measure. So we definitely need to kind of like work together towards building this. Next slide, please. And we need a global accreditation system. So not just measuring how companies perform or whether something is deceptive or not, but also rewarding actors in the space, the trailblazers who are actually doing good. Like we always hear about fines and regulation, but there are also companies who are doing good. So unless we reward them, and unless we kind of champion trusted design, it's like, yeah, I think that's a great approach. And the next slide, please. Yep, we need people to work across the world. It can't just be a US or a Europe kind of thing. It has to be global because it's a global problem that's affecting us. So we need a global solution. Next slide, please. Yes, and next slide, please. That's Sage's turn.
Thanks, Kaush. So I will take it from here to discuss about the one of the outcomes from the workshop series of the Tech Policy Design Lab, which is some draft of the principles and guidelines that we're working on. Can you go to the next slide, please? So one of the biggest outcomes from the workshop series is that collectively, a group of over 100 organizations and participants from 30 countries identified like these shared values and principles that you can see from the slides: rights respecting, equitable, accessible, informative, and transparent, at-risk, community first, burden-free. And many of you may find this very resonating or aligned with a lot of other principles that we are talking about here and at IGF and in a lot of other places in our field. Because here's the thing, like everybody is working towards the same values and shared principles, but it's very rarely discussed in the design field. How many times have everyone heard about like designers talking about human rights? You may hear about ethical design. Ethical design is a watered down term, especially from the private sector. And this larger context of digital surveillance capitalism is really exacerbating the problem. And designers have a big role in this, because digital experience of everyone's life these days are shaped by design. It's literally the interface you're seeing on your devices, and those are products of design and user experience. But very rarely it's talked in the design field about human rights. So it's really important that we start talking about human rights framework in the design field. And instead of ethical design, we should start using, we should start using a human rights framework to really discuss about this problem. And because of that, we also developed these 7 principles for the product design. And can you go to the next slides? And these are principles for processes that can enable the principles for the product design. And also, like, if you want to hear more about all of these principles, because I don't have time, I already got an alert, you are welcome to find more on the Web Foundation's website. There will be more blog and also reports talking about these principles and how we are going to do through global advocacy, advocate for these principles and get private sector and public sector buy-ins for these principles. Can you go to the next slide? And next slide. And these are some examples of the prototypes we're developing, because there are policies that develop through a human rights framework, but there's rarely a design developed through a human rights framework. So it's very simple for design, actually. Like, designers work to, we don't talk much. We just do things and show things. So it's very simple to actually illustrate this problem with visuals or with other aids for disabled communities, because all of these designs, they have a disproportionate impact on communities with less digital literacy, with less connectivity, and with less access and resources. So we just want to show some examples for the prototype, and we're developing a thorough prototype libraries of this. And can you go to the next slide?
Okay, is that the last slide?
Oh yeah, that's the get involved slide, which means, okay, you can reach out to us during the coffee breaks and stuff. And maybe we could kind of talk to you about ways to get involved.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm so sorry for being a timekeeper, a very strict one. So we're going to go to Beni, and then we will start the group discussion. Beni, over to you. And also keep in mind that we have persons who are visually impaired, so it's also important to keep them in mind when you're talking about trusted design and deceptive design and dark patterns. Thank you, Beni. Over to you.
Thank you. Is someone sharing screens for me? I'm really sorry.
You can go ahead and share your screen.
Sure.
Thanks.
Right. Can I get a check if my
Please go ahead. Thank you.
Right. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I'm Beni Chugh. I work at Dvara Research. My day job is actually slightly different from internet design as well as choice architecture. My day job requires me to think about digital financial inclusion. And it is in that context that I first encountered dark patterns or deceptive designs. So very interestingly, I think Kaushalya also briefly kind of referred to this in her presentation. There was a trend that was going on here in India, which was to say that whenever we would book tickets online, flight tickets online, we would be sneaked in a travel insurance without many of us realizing. And it was quite a simple design. Actually, it was just a pre-checked box which said, sign me up for travel insurance. The cost of the insurance was anywhere between 10% and 20% of the flight ticket itself. And what's interesting is we had never expressed an interest. People who got signed up for an insurance had really never expressed an interest in travel insurance. And even interestingly, many people did not even seem to have the awareness that they have bought one. So even if there was a situation or a circumstance in future where they could have used that travel insurance, where that travel insurance could have been of use to them, there was actually no recall that they had taken one in the first place. So it's very unlikely that they would have gone back and used that product. So this was an interesting case where people were being imposed a product that they had no interest in buying and which they had no memory of buying ex post as well. And then the insurance regulator kind of stepped in and they said that here in India, and they said that actually anybody who's selling travel tickets, they cannot bundle travel insurance with it. And that was really my personal first encounter with dark pattern as a policy imperative. Of course, as customers, we've seen dark patterns, we've been frustrated by them. I think Chandni's work speaks volumes about customers' reaction to dark patterns, but on the policy side, how this could be a problem in the financial inclusion space, that incident from 2019 was my first kind of tryst with dark patterns, if it were. And it was based on that we tried doing a little bit of a secondary research to understand exactly what really dark patterns are to begin with. So what are dark patterns? I think enough and more has been said about it, but really it refers to those tweaks in user interfaces, in the way a web page is designed, in the way a mobile screen is designed, that actually drives people to take actions that are not really compatible with their preferences. So I gave you the example of a pre-checked box where I had no interest in buying a travel insurance, but that pre-check, the default was, yes, I would buy. And that pre-checked box basically just distorted the design of the screen in a way that did not really comport with my original preference of not wanting to have a travel insurance. But the interesting question that we kind of stumbled upon, and maybe it was not so obvious to us at first, is how is a dark pattern different from an advertisement, say, right? I mean, advertisers try to influence our behavior all the time. They try to create a pitch for things that we don't really have knowledge about, awareness of. And many a times if they're really good at what they do, we might even end up buying the things that we initially did not set up on buying. It's a little bit like, how the billing counter always has those small mints, it has those small perfumes and other small things that you just buy mindlessly. So what's the difference between the billing counter arrangement, between the pre-checked box and an advertisement? And we did some reading, and to us, this was the biggest difference, that while advertisements try to influence our preferences, dark patterns or deceptive design tries to manipulate us to actually divert from our preferences. So they're not really making a case for why you must buy a good. What they're doing is they're sneaking the good into your basket without your awareness, without your permission. So while one is trying to influence and make a case for why you might need a product, the other is kind of just imposing a product on you many a times without your permission. And that's really, when you think about it, trying to influence someone is one thing, but trying to impose upon them a product they have not expressed any taste in it. It violates a lot of things. It violates agency, it violates autonomy, and it can be disenfranchising. And a lot has been said about what dark patterns look like. This is an incomplete list from a paper we recently wrote. And this is kind of a compilation of kinds of dark patterns. But really, if I had to go to the level of categorization, then like many speakers before me have said, there are two types of dark patterns, really. The first kind of dark pattern imposes upon the person a product they might not really need, right? And they might do it in a couple of ways. One is literally just sneaking the product in the basket. Or second is what researchers are calling forced continuity, which is to say that it deceives users into subscribing to paid subscription via free trials. So this is the example, for instance, that Chandni was telling us about, that in that supermarket, before you actually sign up for a free, or before you taste a free sample, you have to really share your credit card details. And what that happens is that it automatically checks you into renewed paid subscription. And I mean, if there is some bit of if the dark pattern is slightly mild, you will get a notification saying you can sign out anytime you want, but really the default is a sign in. So they assume that once the free trial is up, you are definitely going to go for the paid subscription. And if you would not want that to happen, you're free to sign out. But there is lots of behavioral studies to show that sign out is more difficult. It doesn't come to human behavior naturally, as opposed to a signing in. So there is more inertia associated with.
Sorry, you have another 2 minutes left.
Sure.
Another
There
1
is
to 2
more
minutes.
inertia. Got it. There's more inertia associated with the sign out. And that's also kind of how dark patterns work behind the kind of under the hood, which is to say that if we have two parts of the brain, system 1 and system 2, where one of them is more rational, more laborious, more thorough, and the other one is more impulsive, dark patterns actually try to appeal to the more impulsive part of our brains. And that's how they're designed. So really, it'll be about continued subscription. It would be about embarrassing you into buying something. It would be about making you feel guilty for not buying something, or creating a false sense of urgency around by saying that, hey, we only have 2 more left, in our stock, or creating a social proof around it that others in your region, others in your demographics are buying it. Would you want to buy something like this? So this is the first category. The second category is, of course, where dark patterns try to extract more personal information from you than what is warranted. And so that's really the two kinds of dark patterns. And quickly, why must we worry about dark patterns? Because some early research is actually showing that market competition is not enough. There was a research conducted by Martha et al. In 2019. And what they told us is that shopping sites that were consistently ranked very high on Alexa's ratings were also shopping sites that were more likely to kind of use dark patterns. Another work from the Stigler Commission actually showed that when organizations do use dark patterns, they do see an upward trend, at least in the short run, in their revenue. And mild dark patterns are likely to not get any kind of pushback even from the customers. Therefore, market competition looks like is not enough. The second reason we should care about it is actually the vulnerable are more vulnerable, which is to say that those of us who are less literate, digitally disfluent, new to tech, are more likely to fall prey to dark patterns.
And wrap up quickly. Thank you.
Yeah. And therefore, I think given these two reasons together, I think that's reason enough for us to worry about dark patterns. The market can't sort it on its own, and the vulnerable are at the receiving end. And therefore, what is it that we can do? And I think that's what the whole objective of this series of workshops has been, which is to come up with a couple of ideas. I'll just leave you with 2 final thoughts. There are some jurisdictions like the US who are actually bringing in, or at least wanting to bring in, a legislation that looks into a reduction of dark patterns and deceptive designs. There are other regulations are trying to kind of adjust their existing customer protection regimes to include them, but the how of it is still very much in the making. And I hope that's what the workshop sessions will help us tease out. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And I'm really sorry because we're running out of time, and we also have the opening for the APNIC later. So thank you to all the speakers. We will now do a bigger group discussion, and we have some quick prompts, questions for you. Kat, do you have those questions so you can put it online as well? Oh, okay. No,
Yes, certainly. I'll show them here.
All right, thank you. While I ask some of the questions. So you've heard about deceptive design, dark patterns. Maybe we want to hear from your experience. Anyone here that has recognized or come across any experience in relation to deceptive designs? How have you dealt with it?
So we're going to try to do something where we have two separate discussions at the same time. So I have taken myself off camera. And I'm curious for any of those who've joined, thank you, Ying-Chu, for your contributions on resources for deceptive design from the FTC work. How does this strike you? Do you feel that you have a sense of what deceptive design is, how it's been affecting you all? And are you aware of other initiatives that are happening in this area? We've held now 5 workshops, and we have some representation from Asia, from East Asia, from Southeast Asia, but the majority are not from North America, Europe, Africa, some in Latin America. So we'd really hope to hear from you all, and perhaps it's called in a different term, but when we describe this, clicking describe, call it to unsubscribe. Is that something that you all have experienced? Feel free to unmute yourselves. Feel free to write anything in the chat. Feel free to write anything in the notes document as you prefer.
Design.
Okay, we didn't prepare that one, but you know what? Confusing. This is good. This is okay. So we'll have the first speaker.
Yeah.
Please mention your name and just your organization. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Kenny Huang, Executive Council member of APNIC and also CEO of TDEMNIC. We just have a very good demonstration about deceptive design. Actually, I just had an interview 2 weeks ago with a journalist, and after the interview, and she told me if I have anything I want to add, I just told her, how can I unsubscribe from your subscription? Because I do have that kind of painful, because I have a lot of subscription. I was unable to unsubscribe, and eventually it become my annual account payable item. So I have suffered this kind of painful and looking forward for the solution. Quickly, I just have 2 comments. The first comment is regarding to deceptive design. And when we try to review the entire supply chain, and basically
Ying-Chu, I don't hear them in the main room anymore. So Anju is going to try to call on you. Can you all hear the main room?
No, we can't.
Okay, so I think then that they are finally enacted their goal of having 2 separate breakouts. So in that case, Ying-Chu, do you mind sharing what your question is here?
I just want to share my experience about the dark patterns. Actually, I learned this word this this year, and once I want to subscribe newsletter, and they say they will share to other their to their some other business. So I didn't know that very small tiny words, and I didn't notice that. Then I got a lot of e-newsletters. Mostly, many of them are just want me to buy something promotion way. So I think that one of the subscription is not only from the website, and sometimes we can also in the our daily life, like we order the magazines or some newspaper, or in our physical life, in our real life, it is very difficult to unsubscribe something, and we have to pay more cost to unsubscribe it to or pay our data. So I think that's my personal experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. Yeah, I think the problems are online, they are offline as well. Chandni, feel free to jump in, please.
Thank you. I think Anju raised a really good point about that dynamic that happens in the unsubscribe and how the complexity that's built into it. One of the principles that we've been trying to push as a think tank here in Australia is it should be as easy to unsubscribe as it is to subscribe. So if it's a one-step process to subscribe to a particular product or a service, it should be pretty much the same principle should be applied to unsubscribe. And we've seen that happen, and we know that companies are capable of it. So, for example, Amazon has recently agreed in Europe to have a two-step cancellation process for its Prime. Now, a lot of people think that because it's a global organization, it can automatically mean that they will apply that two-step cancellation process across globally, but that's not the case. And one of the reasons is, why would they want to? When if they've only been expected to do it in Europe, they won't want to do it other places. So certainly there is something to think about for jurisdictions worldwide about how to make sure that there's that principle-based approach that should be as easy to get out as it is to get in. Thanks, Katherine.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very well said. And I think it's a really stark description of the problem. And then the problem for us who try to influence policy is how it is rolled out differently around the world. So let's see, just looking through the questions here. Are you all working on either these issues, or perhaps you work for a company that employs these kinds of practices and you didn't see anything that was difficult about them? Nothing a problem. Everybody else does this. We'd welcome that perspective too. If you say, look, if we don't do this and everybody else does, then we lose out on business. We've also heard that feedback from others who are in the space, which is what makes it also very difficult to change. Yingchu, feel free.
Okay, I think I have heard, and it is used in some traditional medias. They want to share to their group their customer data. Customers data they can mail in physically or in the email. So I have thought about that, why they share our data to each other, because they can use less cost to have the big benefit from the data sharing, but without the without that the customer knows they are sharing our data. So this may be many years ago when people talk about the personal data protection in the before the GDPR or after the GDPR, and some companies are aware of the GDPR regulation. So after the GDPR, less companies share their data to other group, but I still receive some fraud email or phone calls because they want to make more money from our data. Thank you.
And I'd be curious, I mean, I think that it's well said that, you know, the interest here, whether you're in the online world or offline in person, the interest is how to get more information, how to make more money. And I think your original point also that, you know, it can be legal for this. There is you can click a box and that's perfectly within the bounds, but it's not very honest. And so what we're trying to do with trusted design is say, you know, what does a forthright, what does an honest, you know, where the intention of what you're doing matches the outcomes. And I think that's what we're trying to design. What does that look like? And then what we're trying to write as the guide. How can we write guidelines for a website?
Kat, can you hear me?
Yes, we're just wrapping up, and so happy to kick it over to you. Thank you, everybody who is joining virtually. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Do we have anyone from the remote participants to just share something, or do you want to get someone to share? You said Yung Chu had something.
Certainly, Yung Chu, do you want to share your point about the online and offline, or any other? Feel free.
Thank you.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Anju from Taiwan. I just share my personal experience in Taiwan. So or in other place. I subscribe an email from a website, and then they share my email to other company. So I keep receiving a lot of promotion from and in my email. And the other experience is in our real life. We have to sometimes we ordered a magazine or newspaper in our real life, and they share our personal data in their group, and they may call to your phone number and ask you to subscribe their product or other things. And it is very difficult to unsubscribe their service, and sometimes we have to pay more cost to unsubscribe it. And this year I found some cases in FTC website, and they want to make some regulation to do something to prevent the dark side, and this should be in the consumer protection area. So I think it could be to work together to have a better better or benefit to all the users on the internet. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Yung Chu, for sharing that. Anyone else that would like to share in terms of regulatory or policy aspects? Yes, please. Or if you have a question, please, this is the time to ask.
Ulrich Speider, University of Auckland. I'm looking at this from a research perspective, and the one thing that strikes me is that whether you want to call them dark patterns or deceptive patterns or whatever, they really come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And one of the things that's emerging to be a really, really good tool in dealing with things that come up in all shapes and sizes is artificial intelligence. And what the other thing that strikes me is that the way that we're accessing these things is generally through a very, very small number of gateways. These are all browsers. So there's not a lot of browser platforms around. And with browser extensions that maybe plug into things like databases or AI analysis tools that actually look at what we're doing and that are able to warn us and say, hey, you're about to commit to a travel insurance you didn't want to buy. You know, I think there's a, you know, an enormous amount of potential for research. So, you know, I would say when you're talking to governments, you know, regulators who are looking into this, consider investing in research in your academic communities where they're doing AI and this sort of stuff, because they are reasonably well placed to give you low-hanging fruit in that, you know, in that territory. So that's my comment.
Love that insight. In fact, like smart browsers that can detect deceptive designs was actually one of the recommendations that came up in our workshops. So yes.
Okay. We've been told by the organizers to wrap up. So we've got another 2 minutes to wrap up. And any last words in terms of, you know, just engaging them in the future? How can we engage them? Because clearly this is a topic that needs to be discussed in Asia and the Pacific, but also in the global South. So please let us know how we can, how these audience can be engaged. Thanks. Kosh or Kat, please. Thanks.
Yes, so there was this one slide, but it's okay. It's about ways of getting involved. So, I mean, you can see Sage is here, I'm here, Anju's here. If you ever see us around, like, do let us know. There are so many ways to get engaged. We have these co-creation workshops where we're bringing you all together to kind of co-create the solutions. So our final one is coming up at the end of, on the 27th of September. We would love to see you there. It's all virtual. Secondly, we have a global call for research contributors. So if this is an area you're interested in researching, then please let us know. Then there could be ways of involving you. And lastly, I'm happy to share any resources, any kind of like have chats. I think let's keep this conversation going. This was to start the discussion, but we're really looking to you to actually carry this work forward. So thank you so much.
All right, time's up. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know we wanted to get into workshops, but unfortunately we couldn't, and we wanted to have breakout sessions, but this probably needs to be worked out in the future. So thank you to the remote participants and also to our panelists, sorry.
Yes, and a big thank you to Kat, Chandni, Beni for joining us from all across the world. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Please don't forget to go to comment.aprigf.asia to input what you heard in this really interesting discussion and session. And thank you, all of you.
Thank you. I know it.
It's not too bad. We ran over by just 3 minutes.